Hello, everybody. We are here at the Warrior exhibit in Fayetteville, Tennessee, and we have Linda Williams here. You can tell us who we have as our guest today.
Don, today we have Mr. Philip Gault. He was in the Army, and we look forward to hearing his story today.
Well, I don't know. Not a whole lot that I can tell you, kind of things that happened during basic training and so on and so forth. And one of them was I had a guy that I was a squad leader in 4th platoon. And there's a guy in the 3rd platoon up on there, we was on 2nd floor. And we had foot lockers. And the foot locker had a place for everything and everything in its place. So Saturday morning come, you had the place and you had everything in its place. This guy would get in that foot locker during the week, and your socks was rolled, your t-shirts, your shorts, all this was up in a certain place and rolled a certain way. Well, he would have it messed up. It'd be scattered all over, everything out of place. And I'd sit down and I said, okay, let's do this and do this, do this. Go through the whole thing, get that foot locker just straight where it passed any inspection, come up. Well, next week it'd be the same thing again. And I finally told him, I said, look, I know we're not getting but like $100, $98 a month, $100. I said, but save enough to buy you a pair of shorts, a pair of t-shirts, socks, and whatever to put in this locker. And when we get through on Saturday, you put a lock on it. And don't you open it until next Saturday. Well, to say I never did get him to do it. And he said, if I could just get this, I'd stay in this Army the rest of my life. Go buy it and fix it. He wouldn't do it. But anyway, that was one of the kind of experience I had on it. And we had a guy, 6'8". When we went to the mess hall, you were supposed to do at least one chin up to eat. Well, this guy reaches up and he catches it and lifts his feet off the ground. He don't have to pull up, but he can't pull up. And as far as I know, when we got out of basic, he has never pulled a chin up the whole 8 weeks we was there. And, it's odd, but you met a lot of people, a lot of different people, and people from everywhere. And we had 2 guys from Alabama. And this one, we'd get out marching and he'd misgate us. You could see him bouncing up and down. So this guy, both of them got about half drunk one weekend. And they started on Friday night after we had supper. And he marched him up and down that barracks, down on the 1st floor, till lights was out. Saturday night, he marched him up and down that barracks until lights was out. Sunday night, he marched the guy up and down that floor, calling cadets left, right, until lights was out. Monday morning, we were lined up and started marching. This guy ain't missed a step since. And all of the sergeants trying to train him could never get him to hold cadence. But this guy did, And, it's things like that that you are funny, but yet they're not.
Tell everybody where you're from and what got you in the military, and what year you went in, and maybe where you went to military.
Okay, I went in '59, and I went in because, of course, y'all probably don't hear a day to people, young people, you had a classification 1 through 4. If you was in 1A, hey, they wouldn't hire you, because you might be at that time called in the military anytime. And I said, okay. I said, out of school, can't get a job. So I went to Chicago. I stayed up there 3 months, and I said, this ain't for me. I got to do something different. So I came back to Tennessee and volunteered to the draft in 1959. And I went in March. Of course, went to basic training, Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And another thing that happened during my basic training We had a guy in another platoon weighed probably 135 pounds, and we marched out to the foreign range and back, so on and so forth. And it was kind of warm in May and so on, and he passed out. Just heat cramps, stomach just scratched full of. So as we came up as the last platoon, my platoon sergeant said, fall out and help him. So I did. So if you've been in the Army, you know they always got a drag butt hill. That ain't what they call it, but anyway, it was a steep hill, probably 50, 75 yards long, and then you had to double time or whatever up this hill. He fell at the bottom of this hill. So they fell me out to help him. Here I am, 163 pounds. I'm carrying two 40-pound packs and an 11-pound M1 over here. I got my M1 over here. And then I get him up on his feet and get his arm around my neck and hold him and catch his body. So we're walking up, trying to get up this hill. He'd have one of them cramps. He'd lift his feet from off the ground. I was standing there, all I could do was hold him, because just stand there and hold him. So we got about halfway up the hill, and the company behind us came up. And so the commander of the company fell out. Well, hell, here I am holding up. I can't salute you, sir. You know, it like this. So he asked me what happened. I told him, he says, son, you take these, we'll be back. So I don't know who he called or what, but by the time we got to the top of that hill, we had what we called a company Cadillac there. The company Cadillac was nothing in the world of a big old two-wheel cart. Like you see the Mexicans with an ox to it, only it had humans to it. And that was a company Cadillac, and they put him and all his stuff in that cart and rolled him back to the backs. Well, of course, I had to walk, but anyway, the guy was pitiful, you know, him heat cramps, and then leave him like, you know, there's no officer or nothing with him when he left. He just left out there in the cold, I guess you'd say. But, you know, that's one of the things you happen to remember. And we was in basic training, and they had for gas mask. Well, what they do a lot of times is they'd throw a smoke bomb out there and holler gas. Well, you're supposed to clear this mask, put it on, clear it and whatever, and stand there. Well, we had this guy from North Carolina supposed to be on the track team. And we was out there in the practice, and they throwed out there and hollered gas. He didn't put a mask on, he put a feet on, and he took out running as hard as he could go. Now, get me, he was a track star. This old training officer over here, sergeant, run him down. And I said, hey, what kind of track was you on? You know, you couldn't have been too fast for this old sergeant to run you down. Of course, I'd say so. So he was probably in his late 20s, 30s, and in A1 shape, you know. Yeah. And we had a 3-mile run after we went to exercise. We ran 3 miles. Well, they had what they call double time, and double timed it. But the last week, we had this sergeant that he gave some of them guys a hard time in training because they was not in shape. You know, you got people that come in there and probably never done a push-up in his life. And he was running everybody to death. Well, the last 2 weeks, we had this young lieutenant, he says, oh, Sarge, you're going to pay. And we started running instead of double time. We was actually running that 3 miles. Well, the second day, the old sergeant fell way behind. He hollered, quick time halt, which was supposed to slow down, but Lieutenant hollered, forward march, forward march. And so we left him behind about 3 days. He quit going with us. But, you know, it's I had a guy in there in my platoon. In fact, he wouldn't come in because his daddy was a Navy officer. And he was 17, and when he got 18, his daddy was going to make him go in the Navy. So he got his mama, while his daddy's out in the ocean, signed the papers, and he come in the Army at 17. Well, he was a dud. And when they call a dud, they don't clean, they don't want to do what they're told and all this stuff. So he wound up in the stockade. Well, about a month after he went in the stockade, I seen him, and I tried to talk to him. And he told me, he says, Philip, says, when I get out of here, he says, I'm going to serve my time in this stockade and my military time. He says, when I get out of here, I found something I like to do, and I'm going to do it. And I said, what's that? He said, pick up garbage. And he was a trustee and went around and picked up garbage on base, you know. And you think, well, but, and you know, I've sat and thought about it. You know, this guy like 17 years old, could his name be McWhorter? I done forgot, I have no idea. But he have a business, a garbage business that maybe created, you know, from that. You don't never know.
What did you do in the service?
I was a military police, and they called the nickname Mama Pets, and many Pearl fan clubs, and a few uncallables. But I directed traffic on base, and I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Manzana was behind Air Force Base, one behind us, Kirkland on the other side behind us, and I was on Sandia Base, and we run 30,000 cars off that base in about 30 minutes through about 2, 4, 6 gates, and surprisingly, they'd been doing this for years, and you stand out in the street on a 2x2 box, and you turn and direct the traffic. And they said there'd been only one accident. A drunk hit a guy, and the whole time he'd done this. And I'm telling you, I'm sitting here looking, and you learn to look, and I see people running by you at 60 miles an hour, forward and backwards, you know. And you have to stop them, change around, and run the other way. The point I was on was a main point on the street. I had 3 guys below me that if I run side street too much, it'd mess up their traffic. If I run the main street too much, it'd mess up their traffic. Had 5 guys above me that if I run the side street too much or main street, it'd mess them up. So I was really a kind of a pivot on it, and I did have an incident. The guy in the Navy, and I don't know what the rank was, but he had all kinds of stuff up on his shoulders. And I had a lady that came through there was blind, and she had a dog named Kelly. Anybody that went on that point, it took them 2 weeks for Kelly to trust them. One incident which happened to me is this, our Navy officer. I had the traffic, we stopped both ways because he wouldn't travel if you didn't. Well, after he got on over here, he said he's going to go anyway. So he takes off. Well, I blows him down. And I got off the box after she got him on the other side of the walk. On down, had a divider in the middle of the road. I started the traffic up, went down and chewed his butt out, which was all right, which I didn't pay no mind at the time, but I stuck my finger in his face. Well, they called me in. He said, did you? I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. He says, that's fine, except one. Don't shake your finger in an officer's face. I said, yes, sir. But the dog, that's another story. The lady, she walked up the street every day, and you could not get between her and that dog. If you went to the right and she was over on the right, that dog would move her to the left. If you got over on the left, she'd move her to the right. You'd never get between her and that dog, and which is amazing. But the dog we called Kelly, he would never cross that street until you told him to cross it. And it had a divide. I had double lane. He had a divider in the middle, and he'd walk to that middle one, and he'd stop, and he'd look at you. Go ahead, Kelly. He'd turn and go on across the street. And when he come back in the evening, the same way, but he'd never cross that street unless you told him to. Now, if you wasn't there, that dog would look both ways, just like you teach your kids to do, and walk her across that street. But if you was there, he would not cross until you told him to. And the other one thing, I guess, I was the first one out there. They had this sergeant come out. Every time we have an inspection, I see him standing over here looking. Looking. What the heck's he looking at? We got a guy over here doing this. And what he was doing, he was picking, you had to fit a certain decor to be a traffic MP. You had to look so good on your uniform, blah, blah, and all this stuff. And that's what he was looking for. I found out later. But we got another sergeant, he and I was out patrolling before I got on the traffic patrol one night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, shooting jackrabbits in about 100 yards from the officer's house and running and shooting them with spotlight. It's a wonder somebody had turned us in, got in trouble. Oh, we got by with it. But that's about all I can say on what I had, things that happened.
How long were you in?
2 years. I wasn't in but 2 years. And like I say, it was a volunteer draft. And when you volunteer the draft, you just take somebody else's place. And I don't know whose place I took and whatever, but
Yeah.
After I went in service, I come out, I got a job,
Now, did you use your MP skills in a job after you got out of the service?
Not as an MP.
No, but I mean as law enforcement?
Well, it wasn't that much. I went to work probably 6 months later, a year, on the arsenal as security guard with NASA. But, they got you because you had experience with arms and stuff. But as far as what your military training and that training, it wasn't. It's two different things.
But it helped you out, sounds like.
Yeah, it did.
Well, it did too, but they didn't pay that good either.
If you had it to do over, would you go back in the service?
Oh yeah, I think personally, every boy ought to do 2 years.
I agree with you.
I think every girl ought to do 6 months. Now there is exceptions to, wheelchair people and so on.
Right.
But today it's not like it was when I went in. Today there's many of wheelchairs is computer illiterate that make us look, especially me, look like a fool, And there's a lot of things that now they could do. And it learns them respect, it learns to take orders, you learn that you have to do this, hey, you can't smart off and go, you got to do it. And, the other thing that it would do, which you think about it would make the world's biggest army. Because you're, just as a non-com, like I was, which I was on a PLC. And I'll tell you what I told her. The old sergeant called me in for re-up. And said, would I like to enlist for... I said, no, Sarge. I said, I just want to be a PLC. He said, you're already a PLC. I said, no, I'm not, Sarge. I'll be a poor effing civilian. and he told me, get out of here. But anyway, you think about it, today, how many women need a gun on them if they're going anywhere? Basically all of them now, at this day and time. But you would have the world's biggest army at your fingertips because all these people, and I'm going to go to college and playboy. No, if he went through 2 years of service, I'm going to go to college and make something out of myself. And I was young and dumb, like a lot of others, and I missed the opportunity of that. I had a Air Force guy come by and says, you need to go down to New Mexico State. What do I need to go to New Mexico State for? Well, we had a flag football team. I don't know if you've ever played flag football or not, but you have a little flag on each hip. And that's what you don't tackle, you pull this flag off. Well, we had to, of course, kick and everything else. I could punt up to 60 yards. Well, he says, they need you as a punter. Well, if I'd have went down there, I'd have probably wound up in ROTC and a whole nother field, another round. But young and dumb. And again, in 59, 61, our college education was not a necessity. You know, it was the rich people, really. And I sure wasn't a rich off a farm.
You talking about the, everybody serving 2 years, it would teach discipline.
It would teach discipline, respect, you know. There's no discipline, no respect for people today. And, you know, driving. You get out here driving, get out of my way, you know. That's the attitude that people give you. Get out of my way. I've got to go so-so. Well, why didn't I leave 5 minutes early? And so, you know, in just 2 years, you'd be surprised at what they would learn and do if you've never been there. And just like the girls, for 6 months working office work or whatever, you know, of course now they're right out there with the men. I don't necessarily go that is right, but I do think that they ought to have the weapons training. And saying that brought me back to remember, we had this guy that he was uncoordinated, I guess you'd put it. He couldn't do nothing. Well, every time he come up in for some kind of training, who would he get? Just to grab this guy. Come up here and you know. So we was out, and as an MP, you had to train with a 38, 45 pistol, a shotgun, a M1, a carbine, a shotgun, and a grease gun or Thompson machine gun. Thompson machine gun, you cannot hold it straight and shoot. It'll walk up. I don't care how big a man you are, how stout, and they showed us some big men. And that gun as far as it goes up. Why, I don't know. You can lay it down on its side and it'll sit there all day long. Well, he grabs this guy out there and gonna make a you know what out of him. Gives him the gun, says, now shoot that target. Well, he laid it down and he put 30 out of 30 in his target. No, you didn't do that. You knocked those pastes off. Have you ever been in there? They have thumb pastes. You go over there, and when they shoot a target, you have to go out there and cover the holes. So that makes the targets last a lot longer, you know. So he sent a guy over to the target house and brought a brand new target, nothing on it. Clean. Set up, said, all right, now let's see you do it again. He put 30 out of 30 right back in that half of man. They never bothered him no more. After that,
I guess not.
and you know, he couldn't do a lot of things, but that was one thing he could do, you know. And, you know, you wonder what happened to a lot of those people, and there was nobody in this area that was associated with me and out there. I was out there, and the closest I can remember is Johnson City. Had a guy from Johnson City, and then I had some from Atlanta, Georgia, and Rome, Georgia, and place, but not nobody you say right here. I guess that's my story.
It's a good story. Thank you for your service.
It is.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here and sharing it with us today.
Thank you for having me.